네, 모두 즐거운 커피 브레이크 즐기셨나요? 네, 저는 개인적으로 다음 순서가 정말 기대가 되는데요. 바로 다음으로 글로벌 혁신 기업의 현지 크리에이티브 디렉터들을 초청한 언택트 컨퍼런스 세션이 시작될 예정입니다. 동시 통역기가 의자 위에 준비되어 있으니 모두 사용하여 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 자, 팬데믹 이후 불확실한 글로벌 경영 환경 대응을 위한 크리에이티브 트랜스포메이션 인사이트 공유를 해주실 두 분의 연사를 모시게 됩니다. 그 첫 번째로 크리에이티브 마인드시프트를 주제로 인사이트를 공유해 주실 구글의 데모스 익스피리언스 익스페리먼트 리드의 마우리치오 루이츠를 모셔보고자 하는데요. 현 상황에서 소개해 주시는 마인드시프트가 도대체 뭘지 정말 기대가 됩니다. 그럼 스피치를 위해 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. Hello, Mauricio, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you see me?
Yes, perfect. Yeah. Welcome to Future Conference. How's it feel?
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be chatting with all of you.
Okay, can you start your speech?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Hey, so first and foremost, thank you very much for having me. My name is Mauricio. Some people like to translate it as Mao. You can call me Mao. The first thing that I'm going to do is I think that the work speaks for myself a little bit better sometimes than I do. So I'm going to show you one of my favorite pieces of work that I've done in the last couple of years.
Meet the unbanked 8 million Colombians belonging to the lowest income class with daily wages averaging $3.5.
Yo no tengo cuenta bancaria. No me da como para abrir una cuenta bancaria para ellos.
Banks don't cater to them because there is no profit to be made. They cannot get loans. They have no formal means of payment. They have to hide their savings, which exposes them to crime. They have been effectively left out of the financial system. Payphone Bank by UNE, a way of converting 13,000 payphones across Colombia into a micro-saving system for the underprivileged.
Yo creo que necesite un sistema para poder ahorrar.
Cualquier moneda que uno pueda ahorrar es una ayuda.
With Payphone Bank, users can activate an account at any UNE store. Then they can deposit their earnings, consisting almost entirely of coins obtained through ambulance sales, in the payphones. A central asterisk-based interactive voice response system controls them via DTMF tones, turning 13,000 analog phones into de facto digital banking terminals. The money goes into a micro-savings account where it can be used to pay for utility bills or buy public transport tickets in the form of SMS that work even the most basic cellular phones.
Tenemos más de 6.500 teléfonos distribuidos en toda la ciudad, disponibles 24 horas del día para que la gente pueda ir a ahorrar, a comprar su electrodoméstico, hacer lo que quiera desde el teléfono público.
Payphone Bank can also be used to request microloans at participating stores, allowing users to buy essential appliances previously out of their reach, such as refrigerators and heaters. This allows Colombians living in the fringes of society to start building credit history, the first step towards their full integration into the financial system.
Okay, so what I just showed you is one of my favorite pieces of work for the last couple of years. To give you more context on who I am, I was born in Mexico City. That's why the funny name. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I've sold 2 technology companies in the past. I also helped bankrupt other 3. I think I learned more from the bankruptcies than from the selling of the companies. Then I was hired to do some work for Nike in New York. And then this is where I met a bunch of my friends from South Korea. I worked in Gray in New York as well. And I'm a creative director and also a team lead at Google, where I specialize specifically on artificial intelligence and applying that to some of our products that you probably know and love, like Gmail, Calendar, Meet, etc., etc. In my career, what I do is I solve problems, and I've done it for small and big companies, Google, Volvo, Procter & Gamble. That's kind of like to give you a very high level. What I do is ranges from narratives, experiences, and then all the way to products. Maybe you'll find this familiar if some of you use Google products, Android specifically. You probably know some of these logos that we recently changed. That was my team who was behind it. We changed the most recent logos for Gmail, Calendar, Drive, Docs, and Meet. Hopefully you like them. If you don't like them, I would love to hear it as well. As I mentioned, my work branches in a lot of places, but what I'd like to tell you today and what I'd like to speak to you today is this path from narratives, experiences, and products, and some of the things that have helped me to kind of like, what I say is like create this creative mind shift that I think that has helped me in the past. It all starts with people. A lot of people ask me, what technology should I focus on? What technology should I study? But technologies come and go, but people stay. And this is very important for you to remember. What I'm here to talk to you today is called the innovator mind shift. Three mind shifts or frameworks that will make the impossible problems seem possible again. And they start like this. Knowing is the enemy of learning. Number 2 is saying verbs and not nouns. And then number 3, doing is the best way of learning. The first one is knowing is the enemy of learning. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about knowledge as a noun. Knowledge I really like. The thing that I refer in here is knowing as a verb, as an action. Because if you think about it, it's really hard to do two actions that are active at the same time. An example that I like to say is, you cannot really talk while you're listening, and you cannot really listen while you talk. The mental framework, the mental pathways in your brain don't really allow you to do two things at the same time really well. And so when I say knowing is the enemy of learning, it's because those two verbs are against each other. When you know, when you're in the verb of knowing, it's really hard for you to learn. Let me explain to you why. Knowing at a very high level holds the current sphere of knowledge firm. This is what happens in your brain. The sphere of knowledge is this beautiful thing of all the things that you know that exist. Knowing keeps it tight and centered together, but it doesn't allow it to expand very easily. So while you're knowing, the expansion is not happening. If you're in this status of learning, you're seeking to expand that sphere with new possibilities. And so you expand your sphere of knowledge as you're doing the learning process. Knowing is really good for problems that have been solved really well, problems that need no major improving, but learning is most important when problems have never been solved before. In the way that I work, the topic that I do, which is technology, most of the problems that I'm solving with my team have never been solved at all. So we need to keep this status of always learning. Knowing is the domain that creates experts, but learning is the domain that creates innovators. I'm inviting you to be more on the latter, more on the innovator side. A good example for me that I really like to quote is Boyan Slat, a kid from the Netherlands that I had the pleasure of meeting a couple of years ago. He started his journey to clean up the earth, specifically pollution in the ocean. And he created a machine maybe around 7 years ago. He didn't know very well what he was doing, but with this mindset of learning, he now have built one of the largest cleaning machines in the world. And he's calculating that by 2028, he's going to be able to clean a third of the entire plastic pollution that's in the ocean. So this is the first one. Knowing is the enemy of learning. Remember that. Always aim for the learning. The second one, I'd love to for you to think very quickly, what is this? In English, we call this a fork. And then what happens in here, all of you knew the word in English or in Korean. What happens in here when I ask you, what is this? In the 10th of a second, you stop thinking about the object that's in front of you because you've categorized it. You've created a label for it. And the brain is really good at doing this. We have labels for pretty much everything that's around us. But what labels do is that they stop you from evaluating and challenging the object that's in front of you. The second innovator mind shift that I'm here to tell you is see through verbs and not through nouns. The example that I just shared with you previously, it's a noun, it's a fork. But if you see through verbs, if you see how things happen instead of what they are, you will start to ask much more interesting questions. For example, I could tell you a story of the aluminum that created the fork that I just shared with you. I could tell you the story of stars traversing the universe, colliding 187 million years ago, and how it created these like beautiful metal that you have. Or we can talk about the history of the fork. I can tell you how the Italian or the Byzantine Empire invented it as an agricultural tool, and then it was the French King Louis XVI that brought it into our homes, and that's why we have it all the time. It was because of that story that the fork is in front of you. Seeing through verbs and not through nouns, it's really seeing how things become instead of what they are. And you see, the thing is that these labels that I'm referring to, like fork, apply also to people. And what I shared with you first is always focus on people. Technology come and go, but people stay. And I think when we don't focus on people, we start adding labels to people. And instead of knowing somebody that you really like, that you could potentially enjoy, you start labeling them as that person is brown, or that is a woman, this person is poor, this person is rich. Those labels are what really are, I think, creating a lot of the problems that we're facing today, like sexism, racism, jingoism. So I do think that if we see through verbs and not through nouns, we can start to ask ourselves a little bit more on how we're categorizing the world in front of us. An alternative way to think about it, as I mentioned, is watch how things become instead of what they are. And when I say watch, this is very important, because the best solutions in technology, and I think in every single profession, the best solutions come from great insights into human behavior. Let me show you what happens when you don't think about people and think about technology first, or we think about a label first. What happens is that you create in the abstract. A great example for this, and I really like this concept, is called shindogu. It's something that's apparently useful, but impossible to use. In this example, we're seeing somebody eating a cup of noodles with a ventilator, just so that you don't get burned. Or in the case if you have a cold, you could always roll around with a roll of paper on top of your head, or on the right if you're trying to sleep on the subway. There are many examples of this, and this is of course a piece of comedy from Japanese culture, but it applies very much to a lot of the creations that we have. Silicon Valley, where I work, it's known for creating things that nobody really wants. A lot of the solutions that we have today for technology are nothing more than the first thought that somebody had. I want to challenge you to kind of like question yourself and question maybe your teams or the processes that you have at your company. Is your product a shindogu? Is it something that looks potentially useful, but in reality doesn't have a lot of purpose? Have you created one before? Maybe think about it after this talk. Think about what you're working on and see if you are overcomplicating something. Always remember to focus on people. Figure out the path of least resistance. Always find what humans are gravitating towards and start from there. The third thought that I want to share with you is that doing is the best way of learning. Remember the first one? Yes, exactly. The second one? I'm hearing somebody, but I'm not sure if it's the audience. And then, well, this is the third one. Doing is the best way of learning. And I don't know if this looks familiar to you, but this happens in a lot of companies. This happens in companies like Google as well. Somebody has a great idea that then gets transformed into a slide deck. It's a great idea that then takes the shape of a presentation. And then the presentation is presented at a meeting at which a lot of people have more ideas to add to that idea. And this becomes an endless cycle in any company, in any process. I call this the Bermuda Triangle of ideas, because what happens is you're focused too much on creating and brainstorming and generating, but there's not really anything being executed. Some people say think before you do, and a lot of companies are great at this. They think too much before they do. In today's world of disruption and technological imperatives, I think you need to do before you think a lot of times. Because knowing that something works is more important than knowing why it works. A good example for me is Wikipedia. In theory, this shouldn't be working. This is a website that's free for everybody. I use it every day, multiple times. It's free, and it's curated and edited by millions of people across the world. There's been like economic studies across the world. There was a very famous one from Harvard where economists couldn't explain why Wikipedia worked. And please remember, knowing that something works is more important than knowing why it will work. Because, to be honest, creation and development, product design, architecture, all of these beautiful professions that I think some of you are part of, it's not a straightforward process. It's more about finding the connections and mixing methods to find the right path to meet people and to meet your user. One of the best ways for you not to get lost in this Bermuda triangle of ideas, as I call them, is to prototype. A way to define a prototype is just to create something that proves a point that you're trying to, or proves a point of a problem that you're trying to solve. A prototype is just the simplest version of something that will take you a long time to build. A lot of people ask me, why should I prototype? Well, you prototype so that you can create a thing that you put in front of people to prove that your idea has value. A lot of times we spend a lot of time building something that nobody wants, and we really don't want that. This is a great example on Henry Ford, who said, if they had asked me what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. This is from Henry Ford, the creator of the Model T. And of course, Henry Ford didn't go out to create the Model T immediately. He created a lot of prototypes, a lot of iterations. And then it was after the 14th iteration that the Model T came into existence. So always think about how can you prototype. Remember, when is it a good time to prototype? As early as possible. The fidelity of your prototype should resemble the fidelity of your thinking. Don't be afraid to show prototypes early and often, and get feedback to guide your next product or design decision. I'm going to share with you a couple of things that we do at Google to kind of like prototype really quickly. The easiest way to prototype is writing. You can put your idea into a really good narrative that you can share with people. This is the quickest one. You don't need any technology to do it. Write what you're trying to do, share it with people, and see what they find. But as soon as you can, move out from language. Start to show something that people can have an emotional reaction to. You know what they say, a picture is worth a thousand words, but prototypes are worth 1,000 pictures. Go beyond language as quickly as possible and start to concretize conversations around objects that you create. It could be as simple as drawings, or it could be a full-on thing that people can have in their hands. At Google, we really like to create physical prototypes, as I mentioned. This is actually the prototype of the new Gmail icon. Before we set out ourselves to go into the full redesign of all these icons, we wanted to see what was the emotional reaction with the shapes that you had in front of you. So we created physical versions of it, as well as this is for Google Meet, the competitor of Zoom. I'm pretty sure that some of you use it, but we're creating hardware for Meet. And so the first thing that we wanted to figure out is, let's figure out if it makes sense. Would I feel comfortable having a screen in front of me? What kind of size would I need? And so very quickly you see that you don't need no engineers to start putting this together. You can very quickly get a reaction from people. Another example is just prototyping in paper. Very easy. The thing of it is, doing is one of the best ways of thinking. You can't possibly be right with the prototypes that you build if they're just like paper and drawings. you won't be right. It's very naive to think that we'll be right. But the point of it is that you make it short so that you can focus on the learning and starting to identify the patterns that you see in users reacting to your product, to your object, to your design. Focus on the learning. And let me tell you something. I'm about to wrap up this conversation. I was told that I have 30 minutes. I want to wrap up with a very important thought. Today, you don't need any technical skills. Coding will be completely automated. We're in the process, we've been through many revolutions, but in the next 5 years, we will leave the revolution of the no-code movement. If you have time, please go Google NCDPs, which are no-code development platforms. These kind of platforms allow entrepreneurs, designers, and thinkers to start to kind of like tinker with frameworks that were previously allowed only to be able to create it through code. The basic principle is that coding at a high level is just a set of rules that dictate if something happens, then something else has to happen. If I get a text message, then I can do X, Y, or Z. The worst investment as a creative person in 2021 is to learn how to move zeros and ones. This is a very shocking message coming from an engineer that's working at Google, but this is not the most important investment that you can make. Some examples for these are you can create a virtual reality or cryptocurrencies or augmented reality or subscriptions without code. There's a bunch of platforms out there that can help you solve your problem without you needing to touch a single line of code. You can search for them. Every day, there are creators trying to solve problems like yourself that post their work for free. A great website for this is Product Hunt, where new tools are available every day. I would love for you to go to producthunt.com, take a look at what the problem that you're trying to solve, and then just say no code. If you're not a coder, you can just type no code and then the problem that you're trying to solve, and I'm sure that somebody's working on it. Google is also taking part of this. We're thinking about ways in which we can empower the billions of users that Google has to create their own platforms without the needing to code, as easy as interacting with language. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then a prototype is worth 1,000 meetings. This is so fucking true. Keep that. I hope you remember this from today's presentation. Focus your energy on building your vision. No more technology. Remember, it's always about people. Thank you very much. That's all on my end. I'm gonna leave you here with some of my social media. You can find me everywhere at Mao_RS, and you can also find me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/mao.ruiz.9. Thank you so much for the time. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you for sharing insight, Marcio. And we look. Oh, yeah. So, 네, 갑자기 영어를 하게 되네요. 계속 하니까. 네, 정말 이 시대 창업 생태계에서 저희가 꼭 필요한 인사이트를 던져주신 것 같습니다. 저도 개인적으로 스타트업을 하고 있는 입장에서 정말 이제 인사이트라고 불릴 만한 것들을 많이 얻었던 것 같고요. 그리고 우리가 필요한 마인드시프트, 그리고 우리가 꼭 유념해야 할 것들에 대해서 잘 정리를 해주신 것 같습니다. 그리고 혹시 가장 인상 깊었던 것들을 이야기해 주실 분이 혹시 계실까요? 저는 가장 인상 깊었던 것은 구글의 No Coding Movement와 그리고 이제 Doing is the best way of learning 이라는 것이었는데요. 사실 스타트업을 하면서 제가 가장 중요하게 생각하는 것은 성장 마인드셋입니다. 그 성장 마인드셋에서 가장 부합하는 그런 말이 아닐까 싶어서 저는 가장 인상이 깊었습니다. 혹시 인상 깊었던 부분 하나만 이제 소개해 주실 수 있는 분 계신가요? 혹시 손 들어 주시겠어요? 네네, 감사합니다. 네네.
네, 버뮤다 트라이앵글 오브 아이디어. 결국에 실행이 먼저다. 그 실행하면서 피봇하고 계속 이제 디벨롭 해야 된다는 거를 구글에서 또 이야기해 주니까 네, 그렇고 사실 그 재원 스타트업은 사실 리소스가 적잖아요. 재원이 적다 보니까 그들을 지속적인 전환 배치를 하고 입체적으로 활용을 또 해봐야 되거든요. 네, 그런 부분들을 좀 직관적으로 보여준 게 저는 또 큰 도움이 됐습니다.
네, 맞습니다. 너무 감사합니다. 딱 이제 이 창업 생태계를 주도하시는 지휘자로서 그래 스타트업이 겪는 어떤 어려움들과 그리고 부딪히게 되는 많은 문제들을 많이 봐오셨을 것 같은데 그런 관점에서 정말 좋은 인사이트 이제 공유해 주셔서 감사드립니다. 네, 그리고 혹시 지금 준비가 되었나요? 아, 네네. 이제 조금 더 하나 이제 한 분 더 말씀해 주시면 좋을 것 같은데요. 혹시 가장 이제 인상 깊었던 부분 공유해 주실 수 있는 분 계신가요? 네, 저는 개인적으로 그 성장 마인드셋이라는 책을 보면서 이 팀원들의 잠재력을 100% 끌어올릴 수 있는 사람이 되어야겠다라는 생각이 들었고 한 기업의 수장보다는 수문장이 되어야겠다라는 생각이 많이 들었습니다. 이 내 기업 안에 내 팀 안에 들어있는 사람들이 안정감과 그리고 도전할 수 있는 기회들을 문 앞에서 물어다 주고 그리고 안정감을 느낄 수 있도록 든든하게 앞에서 버텨주는 그런 문지기 같은 사람이 되어야겠다라는 생각이 많이 들었었는데요. 그런 관점에서 아마 이 크리에이티브 마인드 시프트 그리고 이제 마인드셋을 바꾸는 이런 여러 가지 기회들을 우리 팀원들에게도 많이 공유해야겠다라는 생각이 들었습니다. 혹시 그 넥스트 챌린지 김영록 대표님 이 강의를 들으시면서 조금 인상 깊었던 부분이 있으실까요? 마이크 전달해 주시기 부탁드리겠습니다.
아니 저는 사실 이제 저희 구글하고 페이스북하고 뭐 그레이하고 그 핀터레스트하고 우리 저희들하고 네트워크가 돼 있어서 얘기를 좀 하다가 느꼈던 게 지금 단 하나 있었어요.
네네.
우리나라 지금 초등학교가 코딩한다고
네.
지금 막 열성 코딩할 끝났다잖아요. 그러니까 이게 우리가 얼마나 생각을 빨리 바꿔야 되는지를 오늘 한번 느꼈다고 생각을 합니다.
네,
경북대학교 우리
감사합니다.
예, 경북대학교 임기병입니다. 제가 이분 오늘 강의를 듣고 저 자신이 평시에 늘 생각했던 것이 있는데 저는 늘 지금까지 어떤 책을 너무 많이 읽지 마라 이것이 제 생각이었습니다. 사실은 책을 너무 많이 읽어버리면
네.
남이 규정해 놓은 그 지식이랄까 그 진리에 너무 갇혀버리기 때문에
네,
그걸 제가 굉장히 우려하면서
네네.
지금까지 살아왔어요. 그래서 나름대로 독창적인 생각과 사고 그 다음에 이 상상이 더 중요하다 하는
네.
걸 생각했는데 오늘 이분 이야기를 듣고 그게 사실 맞았다는 생각을 하게 되었고요. 그 다음에 이제 이런 스타트업들을 우리가 지원하는데 이분들은 뭐 지금 이제 말씀하시기를 뭐 종이로 접고 만들고 하는 이제 그런 단계였고 앞으로는 이제 이야기하는 대로 코딩이든 뭐 3D 프린팅이든 상상하는 것을 현실로 가장 빠르게 만들어주는 그런 플랫폼이
네네.
굉장히 중요하다. 그래서
네.
우리 한국인들은 어떻게 보면은 스피드에 관한 한 우리가 가장 큰 강점을 가지고 있기 때문에
네네.
우리 뭐 김영록 대표도 있고 뭐 그런 시스템, 스피디하게 어떤 생각을 현실로 만들어주는 그 시스템을 좀 보완하면 좋겠다는 생각을 했습니다.
네.
네.
너무 좋은 말씀 감사드립니다. 사실 창업 생태계에는 룰이라는 게 존재하지 않잖아요. 이 룰을 깨는 사고 방식이 가장 중요한 생태계라고 생각이 들기 때문에 이런 창의적인 생각들이 가장 중요한 경제 산업 부분이라는 생각이 듭니다. 그리고 일단 저는 개인적으로 이제 일을 했었을 때 외국에서 일을 했었을 때는 항상 보스께서 말씀해 주셨던 말이 틀을 깨는 생각을 해라. 그리고 이 블랙박스에서 벗어나는 생각을 해라. 그리고 너의 세이프 존에서 항상 밖으로 나가라 라는 말씀을 해주셨는데 그런 말들에서도 다 뜻이 있었구나 라는 생각들을 요즘 와서 많이 하게 되는 것 같습니다. 네, 그러면 또 혹시 한 분만 더 마지막으로 공유를 해주실 분이 있을까요? 네. 저는 아마도 이 그냥 이제 이건 여담이지만 노 코딩 무브먼트를 보면서 아 서울에서 열심히 코딩을 하고 있는 저희 개발팀이 많이 생각이 났는데 그분들께는 이걸 보여드리지 말아야겠다라는 생각도 조금 들고요. 그리고 이제 저희는 네이버 D2 스타트업 팩토리에서 지금 일을 하고 있는데 거기 계신 분들은 모두 다 개발자분들이세요. 근데 이제 저희 팀 같은 경우에는 개발팀과 이제 기획팀 완전히 개발팀으로 이루어진 팀은 아니고 이제 기획팀 분들이 계신데 굉장히 유쾌하게 일합니다. 아까 이제 좀 토크쇼를 해주셨던 이제 공동대표 두 분께서 또 굉장히 그 텐션 보셨죠? 저희가 그 텐션으로 일을 하는데요. 여러 사무실에 계시는 많은 스타트업 분들께서는 정말 진지하게 코딩을 하고 계시다 보니 저희가 가끔 죄송해질 때가 있습니다. 그래서 이제 그 노 코딩 무브먼트 그 이야기를 들으면서 서울에 있는 저희 개발팀이 생각난 거는 이제 저뿐이겠죠. 네. 네, 그리고 여러 가지 크리에이티브 마인드 시프트가 많이 필요한 때인 것 같습니다. 이제 요즘 이제 코로나로 인해서 많이 어려운 시국을 이제 헤쳐나가고 있는데요. 이런 어려운 시국을 헤쳐나가기 위해서는 누구보다 더 이제 틀을 깨는 사고가 필요하다고 생각이 되고 옛말에 궁죽변 변죽통이라는 말이 이 크리에이티브 트랜스포메이션이라는 화두와 정말 잘 어우러지는 것 같습니다. 어려운 시기가 오면 변해야 하고 그리고 변하게 되면 통하게 된다라는 옛말이 정말 요즘만큼 많이 이제 떠오르는 시기가 없는 것 같습니다. 저희도 이 슬기롭게 그리고 크리에이티브하게 트랜스포메이션을 해서 이 어려운 시기를 헤쳐나가고 그리고 이 어려운 시기를 발판 삼아서 더욱더 도약할 수 있는 대한민국 창업 생태계를 만들었으면 좋겠습니다. 네, 그래서 마지막으로 이 크리에이티브 트랜스포메이션과 이 크리에이티브 마인드셋에 대해서 마인드셋 시프트에 대해서 조금 한 번 더 이야기를 해주실 분을 조금 모집을 해보고자 하는데요. 마지막으로 한 말씀 해주실 분 계신가요? 네, 너무 감사합니다. 네.
예, 제가 약간 의외로 이렇게 오늘 일정을 알게 돼서 아침에 체크를 하고 참여를 했는데 저는 좀 생소한데 저는 가야일보의 대표를 맡고 있는 언론인입니다. 제가 이제 끝까지 일정을 조정해서 남아 있는 이유는 부산에서 이런 행사가 열리는 굉장히 의미가 깊다고 생각하고 이게 제 자신이 막 이렇게 패러다임이라는 말을 듣고 제가 30년 전에 행정학 할 때 좀 한번 뒤집어진 적이 있는데 오늘 제가 생각이 완전히 우스갯소리로 대선 후보를 누굴 지지해야 되는지 프레임까지 다 바뀌는 경험을 하는데 그게 부산시장은 보선이 있고 아까 우리 부시장님도 다녀가고 했습니다만 짧게 말씀드리면은 시진핑이 계속 중국을 지배하는 이유를 알겠고 여러분들이 보실 때 정치 이런 거 보면 얼마나 웃길까 이런 생각이 제가 들어서 참 마스크를 쓰고 있는 게 다행이다 생각합니다. 그래서 제가 말씀드리고 싶은 거는 이 스타트업을 만드시고 이런 좋은 분야를 일을 하실 때 잘 모르고 설치는 인문사회과학 쪽에 있는 분들을 좀 잘 가르쳐서 세상은 이렇게 작동이 된다 하는 걸 좀 자주 교류가 되고 퓨전 하는데 융합과학 하는 이런 게 좀 됐으면 좋겠고 사실은 사회과학자들이 세상을 만든다 생각하고 포털의 뉴스도 지금도 오늘 추윤 대전을 주로 관심을 갖고 톡방도 난리가 났습니다만 어쨌든 여러분들이 세상을 정교하게 또 이렇게 예측 가능하게
네,
아름다운 세상으로 그렇게 만들어 가시기를 응원하겠습니다.
네, 응원의 말씀 너무 감사합니다. 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. 네, 그러면 이제 다음 초청 연사께서 준비가 되셨다고 하는데요. 다음 초청 연사를 소개해드리도록 하겠습니다. 다음은 페이스북에서 크리에이티브 디렉터 그리고 스트레티지스트를 맡고 계시는 토마스 심이 People Powered Creativity를 주제로 인사이트 나눠주신다고 합니다. 그럼 또다시 박수로 맞이해볼까요? Hello, Thomas.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, good, perfect.
How's everyone doing?
How you feel?
Good, I'm feeling great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
I'm
welcome to
super
Future
honored.
Conference. Yeah, can you start your speech?
Yeah, I'll
Are
just
you ready?
start. Can everyone see my screen?
Sure, yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, there you go. So, hey everyone, my name is Thomas Shim. As introduced, I'm a creative director and a content developer and also an artist living in New York City. I'm currently a creative director and a strategist at Facebook and Instagram. I want to start off by saying massive thank you to everyone for not only giving me the opportunity to share my humble, deeply personal point of view on creativity, but for making space, not just in your busy schedule, but your mind, right? For carving out ever so valuable mental space during this time of difficulties and uncertainties. So thank you so much. I won't dare to pretend to fully understand the sheer amount of pressure you're all under, but I'm humbled by your deep commitment to push forward, actively seek out new, better, and innovative ways to navigate the new world. And I'm also very, very sorry if you thought I'm here to talk about Facebook today. Yes, I work for Facebook and Instagram, so that's not a lie. I do that 9 to 5, meaning doing the day, but my creative expertise, my decades of expertise expands far beyond. And though my perspective and stories I'm going to share with you today are not that of Facebook, they are what makes me valuable to the company and important to the work I do every day. And again, I'm here today as your fellow creative marketer and an innovator. And just like all of you, my life, both personally and professionally, have been disrupted by the pandemic. How I connect with people, I care deeply about how, my work, how I think, how I express, how I create. Everything I've spent decades mastering have been disrupted this year. I'm now in my home office 24/7, connecting with people virtually, like what we're doing right now, just a half a step ahead of everything on a good day. So I've been thinking a lot about what's next. How should I look forward? After months and months of thinking, it finally hit me. I've done this before. Like, I've been through this before. So throughout my career, I've been fortunate enough to work all over the world at some of the most creative agencies, advertising agencies, crafting award-winning stories for brands and their products and innovations. It'd be a total lie if I told you everything was perfectly splendid and that my incredible wit and talent and people skill got me where I am today. That would be a total lie. The success of my career came with a huge price. So I don't know if any of you have watched this American TV show. It's called Mad Men. It's this show about advertising industry back in like the 60s and 70s. I'm not saying the show is the most accurate depiction of the modern day ad industry, but pretty close, just a tiny bit. The ad industry I entered as a young creative looked something very similar to this photo. Pretty white, a lot of Caucasian people, and I'm clearly not. So I realized very early on that I had to do whatever it takes to fit in, to blend in order to get the same opportunity as my white counterparts, simply to be heard or even to be respected as a professional. So I did what I had to do. That's me trying to fit in. What I had to do was embrace the fact that my story was my weakness, my race, my background, where I came from, my educational background, who I am, my Japanese Korean background. I had to hide all that and be westernized in order to fit in, because everything that make me different and make me special was my weakness. My story was not important to my success. And 2017 happened. Everything changed. The oppressions, the fear I've been hiding my entire life from had become unavoidable. I don't want to get too political here, but this is when 2017, 16, 17 was when my country, America, started to openly show its ugly and rather a dark side. And my desperation for hope finally made me look around, finally get out of my advertising kind of zone and looked around and realized how I've been wasting my privilege, my talent, and my story to not only help myself and enrich my life, but the people, the community I deeply care about. I've been abandoning them. It's because despite all these years of hiding, my story, not my resume, not all the awards, not my title, and my ability to come up with creative ways to share this story, my story, with the world, and empowering and inspiring others to do the same, is my greatest power. I completely ignored that, and I had to do a reset to really embrace that new way of thinking. So I started out by pivoting my creative mindset, my entire mindset. I wanted to create something that embraces the power of my story, my community, my neighbors, my friends, my team, my world, everything, right? I wanted to create something that embraces the power of the people, whether that's me or people around me. And I also wanted that same creative to give back to the people. You know, I want to, be powered by the people, but I want that work to also give the power back. So here's a very quick example, and I'm going to go through very quick. And this is the first very project I did, personal project. I worked with a lot of people that got a lot of great traction. It's called Pride Train. And it was motivated by very much by the people. So back in 2017, there was an uprise in hate crime in New York City. This same city that I deeply love, there's been rise in hate crime towards marginalized communities, racial attacks, attack based on orientations, attack based on, whatever. There's been a lot of that. And that really motivated me. And also on top of that, the spirit of New York City, the resilience, love, and the creativity of New York City inspired me to do something about it. So I brought people together. What I did was I brought together a lot of great collaborators, New York City-based creatives together who share the same value, purpose, and passion. And we created. So what we did was, as the launch, we redesigned the New York City's MTA, which is the New York City subway system, our information posters, and we hacked it, meaning we redesigned it to look exactly the same, but the message is no hatred, bigotry, hatred, and prejudice at the station. Very simple. We redesigned it and put it all across New York City. And then people responded. The simple poster idea got everyone talking. We were on every single news channels all over the world, actually, outside New York City, on all news networks. People talking about this simple act of radical creativity, this people power creativity. And people expanded it, meaning people took the idea and made it bigger, meaning now we don't only talk about one thing, but we also talk about voting rights in America. We also talk about women's rights. We also talk about racism. We also recently created a COVID-19 related poster that was specifically for Asian Americans and living in New York City who's being attacked due to racism and due to the rise of COVID-19 pandemic. So it's been expanded by the people. And this idea also transformed the people. What we realized, we didn't make this happen. All over New York City and all over the world, people started creating creative and took the idea of creating these people-first creativity to make their own campaign. So for example, London did something, and also a lot of street artists started doing a lot of things underground. And also, I don't want to take full credit for it, but the New York City MTA, the company, is actually a privately owned company, started doing their own sub-campaign that speaks to, hate has no place on our railroad campaign that directly addresses the same issues we were addressing. So by now, a lot of you guys are asking, hey, Thomas, all sounds nice, but my business is not a charity. How does your cute little art project relevant to my business and my startup, right? You're probably asking the same question. But, I think they differ. Let's not talk about how people power mindset could be relevant to your business or the innovation or the startup or your idea you're working on. So you've probably seen this if you went to business school or if you've been in the industry for a while. This is a very oversimplified kind of a chart, like flow chart of how to develop an idea or a business, right? Discover, develop, and deploy. You discover an idea or intent or purpose, and you develop the idea and you deploy it, right? You launch it, right? When people think about people-powered idea, people try to find the most convenient, easiest place to apply their people-powered kind of ethos. So people kind of okay, somewhere in between discover and develop, maybe I can get some people to work for me, and develop to deploy, maybe I can make people to do some stuff, and maybe deploy, I launch the product and people kind of buy my product and bring the result I really want. But this is not it. If you do it like this, you're never going to create something that is actually truly people-powered. The process of creating authentic and successful people power idea look much like this. It's the way you think, way you build, way you launch and promote. And the best part of it is that it ultimately delivers people powered impact. What does that mean? It means it sparks meaningful conversation. It means the impact creates lasting connection, like what I showed you earlier in Pride Train. Add value to people's lives. It adds value beyond your product. Let's say you sell air conditioner. It keeps people cool. But what if there's a value beyond that, right? Inspires continued action for change. It has a ripple effect. If it's truly people powered, it has a ripple effect. And also, lastly, you look at that, I put it like all the way down there, lasting business results. So there is a tangible result if you do it the right way. Because why? What's good for people is good for business. And I think this is something we all often forget, especially during these pandemic. And there's numbers that shows that people-powered brand service ideas, 89% of shoppers stay loyal to business or brands that share their values and get them, who understands them, right? And 70% of consumers want to continue to hear from brands and companies on what they have to offer and what they stand for. Even during the pandemic, when people are struggling financially, people still want to hear from brands and what they're doing to help the world. And 29% of the consumers bought a product for the first time during the pandemic after learning about a business value, causes, or practices. That's incredible. 29 doesn't seem like a lot, but that is a lot. And you guys all probably know that is a big number considering the current situation. But here's the thing. These same people, these same consumers, demand authenticity. What does that mean? 56% of consumers said that too many brands are using social issues as a marketing ploy. So a lot of businesses and brands are doing it just for the sake of show, right? And 75% of the Gen Z, this new generation of people, will do research to make sure companies walking the talk. If they say they care about people, they want to see the company actually caring about the people after taking a stand on an issue. So we're seeing numbers where people-powered people-powered business is successful. And that's only possible when there is this 360 effect, this 100% ingrained people-powered business practice, right? And where do we start? How do you start? And no matter where you are in your journey, you need to adopt people-powered attitude. And this is something overly simplified, but something I want to take you through. What is this? Attitude that are needed to build people-powered business during the time of uncertainty. So during now, when things are moving fast, you have no idea where to start. You're just busy trying to solve the problem ahead of you. When you're in that situation, but you still want to make people-powered idea, if you want your business to be people-powered, these are some of the questions and some of the tough questions and the right questions to ask yourself. And these are categorized as look around, look inside and out, and look beyond. Starting with look around, asking these questions. Where are we now? How's Korea doing right now? How's Busan doing right now? What is the current situation right now in COVID? Are we struggling? Are we getting better? Understanding that is very important. How are my people, if you have a team, or your community, or your consumers, your audience doing? How are they doing? Are they struggling? Are they getting better? How are they feeling? That's also very important. How are they feeling? Are they exhausted? Are they tired? Are they energized? And what do they need? Okay, understanding all these feelings and emotions in their situation, what do they need? And that idea, what they need, is your next people-powered idea. Look inside and out. What is my core value? What is my value as a person? Do my actions, past and present, my personal actions, and my business's action reflect my value? What's my purpose in life, right? Are my personal values, action, purpose authentically reflect on my brand's idea, product? Is there a connection between me and my idea and my business? Is it consistent and is it authentic? What can I do to make sure my people are not just surviving but thriving? What should I do or not do? What's my intent? What does success look like? Who's going to benefit more? That's very important too. And a few other one, look behind. Is my brand idea, product, service evolving with the new normal? Are we ready for what's next? Is my business ready for what's next? Am I ready for what's next? How can we increase my community impact? What do we need in order to develop new capabilities? The world's changing. What's the new skill set I have to take in? Is my team diverse and inclusive enough to tackle the next normal? What's next? Right? People are not leaving their home as much. So what can I do to make sure I support that, or how to help people gain some sense of normalcy? What do I want people to say about my brand, idea, product, service 2 years from now? After the pandemic, hopefully, what do you want people to say about your brand? What do I want our impact to look like 10 years from now? Okay, after years from now, what do I want people to think of my brand or my idea or my business? So think through that. So these are like 3 things really will help you move forward and really set yourself up for success. And here's an example. American is a fashion brand that's doing exactly that. During the pandemic, every single industry have been affected, especially fashion industry, where they had to shut down all the fashion shows, and industry was hit hard. So this specific designer was wanted to create a fashion line that was inspired by her own story, and create a fashion line that was all about this Congolese woman, these power of these African women. And because they couldn't do a fashion show, she created the world's first Instagram live fashion show, which is highly impactful, right? And it was absolute a hit and successful. And looking at this campaign, she did exactly that. Look around, look inside out, and look beyond. So what she did was she looked around. She looked at the current situation. She looked at some of the issues she could help address, like not just the fashion industry suffering, but also about how about black designers not getting the same treatment. How do I address that in an interesting way? And also, she obviously looked inside and out. She had full permission to do this kind of idea because she's been doing this, walking the walk through her entire career, right? She's fighting for women's rights. She's fighting for racial rights. So she had the full permission, right? And also look beyond. She's not only stopping here, but she's inspired by the people. She's doing something beyond. She's already thinking about what's next to come. So again, she looked around, looked inside and out, and looked beyond, setting her business up for success way beyond right now and beyond this pandemic. So again, authentic people power idea delivers transformative people powered impact. And here's the thing. It all starts with your story. Your story could be anything. It could be your pain. It could be your sorrow. It could be your happiness. It's something that you're passionate about and a story you just want to tell. Apply that to your business because it may be so personal to you, but at the end of the day, every story has a ripple effect. Every story has a ripple effect that someone could relate to, and someone could be your lasting consumer, someone could be part of your lasting community, and that could really set your business up for success far beyond 2020 and 2021, and who knows. And here's the quote I want to leave you with. We will get through this by seeing every challenge as an opportunity to better serve others. It starts with accepting that the world is bigger than what's in front of us. And I think this is something we all have to digest. I think we are so, probably you are, so exhausted right now, right? Trying to figure out what's next and how to bring your idea, this amazing idea you have, to life. And I think at the end of the day, this could be an opportunity for you. This is an opportunity for you to serve yourself, but also others. And I think that's once in a lifetime opportunity you should definitely seize. And I'm excited to see what comes out of it. I hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. You motivated us. You motivated us and me.
Thank
you. We really appreciate it. 네, People Power Creativity에 대해서 토마스 님이 정말 다시금 생각해 볼 만한 인사이트를 저희에게 던져주신 것 같습니다. 사실 people motivated 라는 people powered creativity에 대해서 저도 사실은 어떤 회의감이나 과연 이 people powered creativity란 뭘까라는 궁금증이 참 많았는데 그런 궁금증을 한 번에 날려버릴 수 있는 좋은 인사이트를 저희에게 전달해 주신 것 같습니다. 역시 다양한 스토리와 다양한 관점들이 우리를 영감받게 하고 그리고 성장하게 하는 것 같습니다. 그래서 이렇게 이곳에서의 1일차 컨퍼런스 일정은 아쉽게도 마무리를 지을 시간입니다. 저녁 식사는 코워킹, 코리빙 공연 문화를 한자리에서 만나보실 수 있는 복합 공간인 상상마당에서 진행될 예정입니다. 운영진의 안내에 따라 단체 버스로 이동하시면 되겠습니다. 그리고 2일차 일정에는 부산 창업촉진지구 곳곳을 살펴보는 투어가 준비되어 있으니까요. 2일차 일정까지 재미있게 마무리 잘 하시면서 의미 있는 컨퍼런스 즐기시길 바랍니다. 2일차는 저는 이제 사업을 하러 위로 올라가고요. 그리고 이제 2일차는 더 재미있는 일정들이 준비되어 있으니까 의미 있는 네트워킹 하시면서 또 축제 즐기시길 바랍니다. 그럼 지금까지 진행을 맡은 스타트업 DAL 대표 정주원이었습니다. 감사합니다.